Greetings. So pardon the noise. Some of these videos are going to have this noise because I don't have very much time to make appropriate videos. But videos I must make. So I will record the audio as I drive to work. The near hour it is, if I go the speed limit. And the noise is a 2007 Toyota truck with 306,000 miles. A well-worn Toyota truck. And it's the Midwest, so the noise is obviously rusty exhaust. It's old truck. Anyway. A friend of mine helped finance a trip to Art Expo in 2000. I believe it was 2000. I had a sketchbook with me, and some of the drawings that I remember doing during the Art Expo were dated 2000. I believe it would be a year before a certain event in New York City. Because I was sitting at the window seat when we were approaching JFK and I saw the Twin Towers. Anyway, reminiscing of a person who is getting gray hair. The thing that I want to illustrate is something that I was, and keep in mind, I grew up in the 70s and the 80s. I didn't have the benefit of the internet where any question you ever needed, bang, it was there. So a lot of the things that I learned and discovered was through happenstance and through error and accident, even to this day. And I had a presumption based on absolute ignorance on how to price my artwork. I worked in a kitchen. So I figured, something like how you would price artwork by your time. I had no idea. So I kind of threw numbers out. And my friend, he was a lot older than I, and a very practical, pragmatic fellow. Very down to earth. And so his advice was very, very much pragmatic and practical. Neither one of us, as much as I'd been drawing since I could breathe, essentially, neither one of us had any experience in the old art world. And even fewer connections to places that might give appropriate advice. Of course, there's a telephone, but you can call up random galleries. And how do you do your pricing? So at the Art Expo, with my paintings priced the way they were, someone from one of the booths made a very strange statement. And to this day, now that you see what people make on their social media, which is, the concept of the influencer, I find is interesting to say the least. You're selling your personality, essentially. But it was weird what the guy said. And the guy said I was pricing way, way, way too little. He said, think of the most absurd price that you would pay for that piece of artwork there on the wall, and then double it or triple it. He didn't really explain as to why he gave that advice. He looked at us and offered us this advice on face value without any kind of context or explanation. And it would be quite a few years down the road when I would figure this out. With an article about a green mid-70s Porsche 911, because I'm a car guy, I read car magazines, and the back of this magazine, they was talking about this specific green Porsche that was sold at auction for vastly more money than anyone had expected. Because the car was appraised at X amount of dollars, and when it went to auction, it was expected to reach possibly that, but it tripled that price. And as the article explained, that basically set the next minimum expectation for what that car in that condition at that vintage would get at the next auction. And it suddenly clicked on me, bang, what the guy at our expo was talking about. It's perceived value, not real value. Because in truth, art doesn't really have a real tangible value. And this is the nefarious part with AI art, because art itself doesn't really have a real tangible value. It's not like mathematics or science or the law, where there's a tangible thing that has a tangible, concrete benefit. To society. It's more of an abstraction. And you can categorize a certain value that this thing has in society. Well, art doesn't have that. It has a cultural, but it's not a concrete benefit to society and culture. So it relies entirely on a perceived value. And if you say you put 10 minutes into a piece of artwork, but you price it at $10,000 per minute, say, as a wage drone would put it, time is money, how many dollars per hour. If you say you put 10 minutes into a piece of artwork and you priced it at $10,000 per minute, the perceived value that you place that dollar amount is the value of the artwork. And since you're trading in a luxury good, because that's, it doesn't have a prosaic concrete value in society, so it's essentially a luxury item. Since you're trading in a luxury item, the price that you pay for it defines its value. And it kind of makes a little bit of sense, because you look at the artwork that a 3-year-old could make, but it's selling for tens of thousands, possibly hundreds of thousands of dollars. That is why it's selling for that, because of the perceived value. the perception of value. And since art doesn't have a concrete, but rather an abstract, but it doesn't have a concrete, prosaic value per se, and it exists entirely as a projected value, then the higher the dollar amount a person's willing to pay for a piece of artwork defines its value. And it's weird. It really is kind of strange. It's think of it this way, but like comic books. Comic books were a disposable multimedia. It's the written word. It's a weird hybrid between storytelling and political cartoons. But it was disposable. It was meant for children, essentially. And in truth, that hasn't changed, but the quality of the materials and the quality of the printing available now because of the modern technology has streamlined these processes and made it so much better, and the availability of the better materials so much wider, there were so many wide choices on options and whatnot for producing these comic books that the perceived value can be elevated. And then you have the old classic comic books. Well, so many of them have been thrown away that, a good copy of something from the 1980s or 1990s might actually be kind of rare. But I always found it kind of weird at first when the guy said, you're charging too little. Well, I'm a nobody. No one knows me. I'm just some doofus from a small town in Colorado who works in a kitchen. This is my artwork. But you're charging so little. That's why you're not selling. And now I know. It's quite interesting.